Welcome back to another episode of Camp Time is Real Time. I'm your host, Sarah Lebrecq, and today we have such an amazing pod. Today it's Todd Ferris. Todd was my counselor when I was an Algonquin. It was his first year. We were all there for 6 weeks. It was amazing. Todd was there from the year 1988 for 7 years after. And he became really a staple at camp. And this was really fun going back and talking about all of those things that he was, so well known for, like the belly flop, like being pool director, how that happened, like directing traffic and how that was a one-way ticket to becoming a state trooper. Bill Danner was the co-host on this one. And let me tell you, what a delight. This was so fun. I hope you'll enjoy it, even if you weren't at camp in 1988 to 1994. I think you'll like it. Couple of housekeeping things. Keep sending me emails. I'm starting to get some, guys. So send me an email, camptimefcdc@gmail.com. Give us a follow, camptime_realtime on Instagram. And come on and talk about camp. I promise you. Everyone wants to hear what you have to say. How often do you hear that? Not a lot. So enjoy this one. We get right into Todd's version of running into Aaron Lewis at the Patriots game in San Diego. It's a good one. We'll see you next time. Have I got a Todd story for you?
That was crazy. Enormous, like the world's largest escalator. I've never seen an escalator like this.
Yeah.
And I'm about halfway up the escalator, and this guy turns around and he's like, "Are you Todd Ferris?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Right.
He's like, "It's Adam," and I'm like right away, I pulled it out of my keister, Aaron Lewis, and I'm like, I can't even believe that. That's crazy. And then he's like, "Yeah, whatever, FCDC, whatever." We caught up for, I don't know, a couple of minutes, but my group's going this way, his group's going that way, and it's like, nice to see you, I gotta go. But yeah, that was crazy.
It's so funny. The out of context, I can't believe the both of you put it together. Yep.
I mean, I gotta be honest, I don't think I would have ever recognized, because the difference, I think, going from how old were you? Because you guys were
probably 11 or 12.
Yeah,
maybe?
So I'm 18. So yeah, granted, I've changed, some, but not as much as someone who's 11.
Right.
But yeah, that was crazy.
I don't think the camper, they never forget their heroes, the counselor heroes.
That, to even be, when he was saying, I'm blown away by that.
Mm-hmm.
I totally, your group, and I'm hoping you can help me fill in some blanks too, because I'm going back thinking, so all right, my first year, I was the assistant counselor for the Algonquins.
That's right.
I'm thinking, right? That sounds right.
Absolutely.
Yep. Who was the head counselor? I have no idea.
So it's funny. I have no idea either. You are the person we remember from Algonquins.
If someone's listening, who was the head counselor?
I know.
Well, I remember, Todd, you started your first year. You were in woodworking, correct?
I was, exactly, yeah.
Right. So would it have been? So it would have been Sue,
but
right?
No, it wasn't Sue.
It wasn't.
I really don't think Sue had no. Sue didn't have a tribe. She did the woodworking stuff.
Okay, so you were the assistant woodworking. They put you with somebody and another tribe.
Exactly, but I don't remember who.
Oh, but that does sound right, because I do seem to recall Sue always being kind of a like head counselor plus, had an activity but not a tribe. I forgot that you were in woodworking.
Yeah.
I mean, I forget it all, but
which is very ironic. Like when I was telling my wife about camp or whatever, I'm like, yeah, I was the woodworking counselor. She's like, you were what? I go near a tool. And she's like, we're freaking out. Woodworking was not for me.
You're but I can build a 3D animal anytime you need it.
We talked about how I got into camp. Tom obviously was the coach at Medfield, and my mother worked in the school system, so my mother knew Tom. And then Jerry and John Bucci were both at camp, and I was friends with both of them. So I don't know if it was the Tom kind of recruiting thing or Jerry and John or whatever, but ultimately yeah, we're gonna do this camp. I remember my first year was 1988 because they were making a big deal out of 8888.
Oh,
I don't know if you remember that.
not at all.
Because you were there. So yeah, woodworking, and I remember after that being like, hey, I loved camp, loved it. I got to get out of the wood shop and get outside, because the whole time I was in the wood shop, I'm staring out at the pool, looking at Paul Dubanowitz and Brad
Newton.
Brad Newton, thank you, and those guys, like, you know, diving off the diving board, which is no longer there, and hanging on the pool. And I just said to Tom, I want to come back, but I need to get out. You need to put me outside. So he puts me in Woodlore, and I am about as unwood-like as I am not a handy guy. So after 1 year in Woodlore, I'm like, okay, how do I get to the pool?
I don't think you're alone in counselors like being in the wood shop and just kind of like hanging out at that fence right by the gate to go in, just like looking at the pool, just being like, nice out here.
Yeah, because I really I love swimming. It's funny. In a previous podcast, you were telling, I forget who it was, but you were talking about like the early morning drives and like getting in the water or whatever, and you got to plan it out, and almost as though it were a negative. And I'm like, you get to get in the water. Like I love the water, swimming. It's just, I don't know. I always just loved the pool, loved swimming like that. That's, you ask all these people, like, what are the core activities at camp? And I keep waiting for people to say swimming lessons, but I don't think I've heard one person say that, like swimming.
Oh, you're right.
I mean, yeah, you get to shoot bows and arrows. Yeah, you get to go on a boat, but you get to go swimming. Like, swimming is the best.
Wow.
The whole point of boating for me is like to fall off, fall over, and go in the water.
Todd, you're so right. It's like that. It's almost like the way I would view it is swimming is a given almost, and maybe that's thinking too. I don't know,
because everyone, because you have, that's the one thing you have every day, and.
Yeah. Right? I think the most common memory that people have from swimming, though, is those early morning swims and how miserable they are. You know, and that's why people don't, you know, they don't pick swimming, because that's what I remember is jumping in the water at 8 o'clock in the morning and being absolutely frozen.
Yeah, you're I think, Todd, the first person I've ever heard say, no, that's good first thing in the morning. And that's why you were on the pool staff. That's a good thing. But no, I have a very negative. Really? But it's so cold. Like, granted, it's the summer. There are like, you know, those like double free swim days. When you have swim first, that's great. But otherwise, it's we're wimps.
Todd, were they not mixing the assistants after 3 weeks at that point? Were you doing the whole summer in one?
Yeah, I did the whole. Yeah.
Oh.
Oof.
Yeah, I don't ever remember.
By the time I got there, they were mixing it. After 3 weeks, you switched.
No, I was definitely woodworking the whole, and then a whole summer in the woods.
Wow. And now it's 2 weeks. They switched the assistants, and then and then the CITs are every week.
Wow, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah, the switching the assistants halfway through was always a little like, because that middle session, you like in your group, all of a sudden it's like, we are no longer associated with this person. They just switched it. So it made sense to change it to the session stop. So this came up on Kelly's because I had totally forgotten that you were the pool director. And so how many, and she has not, for the record.
No, yeah, I noticed that in her podcast.
Yeah, she was,
she called me out.
Yeah, keenly aware that you were the pool director, and she was not. Like, how many years were you on staff before you were director? Was it?
So I was there for 7 summers total. So I think it was 2 years working under Kim as as Kelly would put it, the aquatics director. I think we would say the pool director, but then Kelly became the aquatics director. We did not have an aquatics program until Kelly took over.
No, things have changed. Yeah.
So there was 2 years, and then Kim Bedard left. Yep. And Tom basically was like, "Hey, you know, do you have any interest in being the pool director?"
What?
Sorry, Kelly. I don't know. I'm like, okay, yeah.
Right.
So I went and got my water safety instructor, which Kelly already had. And
jeez.
I mean, she 100% is was truthful, and she had a lot more certifications than I did and more experience. I don't know what to tell you.
But she was not from Medfield. She was not from Medfield, Todd.
Well, that's true. She did not have that. She did not have that.
Medfield.
So what do you do as the director of aquatics or pool director? Or to put it another way, what did you have Kelly do when you were director of the pool?
It's just like the one person who's ultimately in charge, right? Ultimately, like responsible for all that goes on in the pool, the safety, whatever. But there were, and now I'm going back obviously a long time, but there were, I think, 3 or 4 of us that were certified to teach lessons, and the others were lifeguards, but didn't have their water safety instructor, right? So like my first 2 years there, I wasn't a certified swim instructor. So I would go to either Kelly or Vicky or Kim and say, I would teach the lessons, but they would ultimately be the ones that would sign the cards. Now, I'm not sure how legit that is by Red Cross standards, but that's how we did it.
Yeah. I'm sure it's fine. Were you the pool director during any of the overnights?
I don't think so. And then my first 2 years at the pool were under, when Kim was the pool director. And then I think we stopped. And then, so then I was 3 years that
probably lucked out. Feels like a lot of responsibility. For those.
Yeah, definitely.
Swims.
And I can tell you, so 100% that I wasn't the pool director during that time, because as a pool director, you don't have a tribe, right? Or a troop,
right.
Tribe. Yeah. And definitely all the years that I was at overnights, I remember doing some cooking and camping with the tribes. So I think the pool director got to go home.
Oh, well, you wouldn't have wanted to.
I wouldn't have wanted to. Yeah, exactly.
When you were my Algonquin counselor, for example, you went to the overnights, right?
Right.
And then you just
so you
hung
didn't
out with
stay
the
over.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to be honest, like I definitely remember the campfire, but I learned as much listening to all the previous podcasts, which have been great, by the way, when I'm traveling for work. Like there's no better way to kill a 3-hour drive than, listening to a few FCDC podcasts.
Love it. We love to hear it.
But like listening to all the other people talking about, like I totally forgot about the counselor hunt. But then of course, as soon as Kelly mentioned me, her, Eric, and what's his name, who I think is now a counselor, I found you.
John Sag,
Yeah, I'm dying, like listening to that, because I totally remember that, but never would have come up with that. On my own.
Bill, do you remember Todd being there? Because you guys,
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I remember Todd in the overnights. You're saying, or I don't remember Todd in particular during the overnights. I remember Jerry and John having a big presence in the shows.
Yeah.
Do you remember, Todd? They did that Blues Brothers skit. Do you remember that?
I do. That was awesome.
They were awesome.
Yeah.
And so I remember those two in particular. When Todd was an assistant, my memory of Todd was that he was very shy at that time.
Absolutely.
He really busted out.
Horrified at the idea of. Yeah.
I would say that he would agree with me that I had a similar experience to him. We were both very shy early on, and then really came out of our shells probably because of camp, I would say, Todd, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, how many times have you heard this? But yeah. Camp is the thing that gave me, I think, the confidence. I mean, Gail used to always say, because she knew I wanted to be a cop, right? And kind of how I got into the parking thing, because she's like, you need practice directing traffic. But yeah, I think that camp is what gave me the confidence to have like that presence or whatever. Because before that, I was just super shy, nervous, whatever, and the idea of public speaking. But now, like before I retired with state police, I mean, I was doing like presentations in front of hundreds of people, teaching truck regulations and stuff like that. Never could have done that, and I truly would say that camp is what got me there.
Just to add to that, Sarah, one of the things that Todd was well known for when he was young as an assistant was his red face when he would be up and sing. He would turn purple. He'd be so embarrassed.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah.
And Tom really grabbed onto that. He loved it.
I can imagine that. Yep.
So he'd have Todd up there just sweat,
Oh yeah.
And
bright red. Yeah.
So not what I remember from either of you, right? Really? So like as a camper, I'm like, here are these two like larger than life people who like get it all together and so it just kind of is the magic of camp, I would say, that like as whatever the camp is doing to help like counselors come out of their shells and like become who they're going to be, you in turn have these kids who are like, this is the person I'm looking up to, and this is my memory of them. Like, there's no like, this is a shy kid, this is whatever. Because like, I mean, I could say, like, from our group, like, I think we felt a special kind of like, not ownership of you, but like, since you had us your first year, and you went on to become one of those like staple counselors, we were like, well, you know, we had him back in the Algonquins, like as if we had anything to do with that. And again, that goes back to us being like super impressed with ourselves from the jump. But it is true like that. I mean, maybe once Bill mentioned that, I can be like, oh, maybe I remember Tom saying that. But no, my memory is like, here's this like super cool guy, and you know, it is what it is.
You mentioned how like as my first year, you were like, you know, my first year assistant counselor. Yeah. So there was like that connection. I feel the same way towards like you and all of your campers. I mean, like, I can't figure that there's 7 years that I was there. I could probably name 20 names, but they're probably all
in our tribe.
You know what I mean? Sarah, Robin, Liz, Adam. You know, you know what I mean? Like, there's this kid. So I just, in all my memories of camp, I feel like even though there were all those years, I feel like they're all you guys. If that makes sense.
We're notorious. So, that's incredibly amazing to hear. I mean, I think I'd said it. I can't remember if I said it on air, but like, we were all 6-week campers from like very early on. And I think that was probably part of it. We all like found ourselves up at Sing a lot. I love that Gail thought your pathway to becoming a police officer was by directing traffic.
100%. She's like, you need to, you know, get experience directing traffic. You're going to be a great police officer or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I could be wrong about this, but I feel pretty confident that John Bucci and I were the first people. I don't think they had traffic directing before that. And Bill, you grew up there as a camper, right?
I don't remember it before that. I do remember you being one of only 2 people doing it. Now they've got about 5 or 6, but
yeah,
at
it was
the
me,
time,
it was just the first year was me and Bucci.
Yeah.
And I remember about halfway through the year, and it might have even been the second year. I think it was the second year, because it was John and I, and John didn't come back after my first year, I don't think. And then the second year, or maybe he was there the second year, but the second year, then Sue came down and joined us, and there were 3. And then I remember Gail coming down at one point with, we want you to wear these white gloves, because cops, when they direct traffic, to see your hands, because we would say like people can't see us or whatever. So we got these giant Mickey gloves, which I hear they're still using those.
Yes.
I feel like
big time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember she's like, try these out or whatever. Well, this was whatever. Okay.
So you're saying you have not used those in your police career?
No. I can confidently say that I didn't. The only time I've ever directed traffic with Mickey Mouse gloves.
And it is the pathway, directing traffic with the gloves.
They are more visible. Maybe I should have brought some with me. There are plenty of times that they probably could have come in handy.
The big smile on your face. That's funny. Yeah, the people who I've talked to who've done traffic all seem to love it. And I'm not kidding when I say, even now, I'm like, I do not understand the system.
I will say that I love it. I like it a lot. I do feel like you miss out on the whole post experience. You know what I mean? Because I only had, I don't remember. So it wouldn't have been my first. It wasn't my first year. So Bucci and Jerry must have been there for a couple of years, because my first year as an assistant, I have memories of being around the Algonquin post.
Yeah.
But it was either the next year or maybe the year after that I started doing traffic, but I definitely did traffic until I left.
Oh, that makes sense. But, yeah. I remember meeting you at the post that Algonquin year. Yep. So that tracks.
There probably wasn't as much of a need for the traffic at that point either, because a lot of the counselors were driving a huge portion of the kids as well.
Yeah.
In fact, Todd drove me.
Right.
When I was a camper I think I was still a CIT when he was still driving me.
Yep.
Now, we did have one weird experience. I don't know if you would remember this, but we had this woman that was like, she was beeping and honking at you, and you really didn't like it, and you tried to get a hold of her. You probably don't remember this, but you actually pulled into where she was, and you were like, you just wanted to know what you did wrong, and she just wouldn't let. She wouldn't let it. She wasn't having it. But it
does sound vaguely familiar. Yeah. And that would be me. Like, well, what did I do?
Yeah.
Instead of just letting it go.
Oh my gosh. You're like, ma'am, I'm training to be a police officer. I run traffic and have the gloves. So I'm going to need you to answer me. Thank you. One of the things that has kind of been jogged in my memory is over the course of you being there. And I feel like once you kind of get in and Tom's like, all right, these are my people. I can count on them for doing certain things. One of the things that I remember you doing, and Eric helped me remember a little more, were the eating competitions. At some point you were pegged as a person who would be in these eating, not counselor competitions, but on the eating circuit. Yeah. And when Eric mentioned the hot dogs, and he was like, oh, he's like,
yeah,
we knew.
Well, I learned some stuff from his podcast.
Right. He was when Eric and Tom were in cahoots to get the eating championship where they wanted it. Do you remember eating anything else? Did Tom just assume you'd be an eating guy, or had you won some competitions at camp? I honestly can't remember.
I mean, I don't know maybe how, other than, I mean, I always liked food. I mean, I was, I'll go up against anybody and beat them. And I think I don't remember specifically how any of this went down, how I would get there, but I feel like, yeah, if Eric can eat a Nutty Buddy, well, I can eat a Nutty Buddy just as fast. And to this day, I swear to God, I swear I beat him, but we all know it was fixed, just like the head counselors, right? And I didn't know that he melted it to soften it. That's brilliant. But yeah, I think it was just one of those things, and I legitimately would be like, all right, I am gonna beat him this time. Now, 30 years later, knowing full well there was no chance in hell that I was ever going to, even if I finished the thing and he still had half of it left, it would have been a victory for Eric, because Eric was the Nutty Buddy champion. And
Ooh.
Right? I mean, that's just how it goes down with that. I think we had some close battles, but I had forgotten there again about the hot dog thing until he was telling the story, and he was absolutely right, man. Growing up, I hated hot dogs.
Do you have any recollections about the belly flop competition?
Yeah, I love the diving board, and yeah, I definitely remember. So I think I kind of feel like, as Eric kind of took ownership of the Nutty Buddy, I think that while I was there, the belly flop competition, I guess, would be kind of like my version of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I love the belly flop competition.
I seem to recall you I always thought, even from a young age, it was like these people going off the diving board and intentionally getting
as much height as you can get. Yeah.
It's it seems painful, but
but it's, hey.
That's what I remember about Todd's belly flops in particular. To me, he was the best that I ever saw at camp. He would hit that diving board, and the diving board would come all the way down to the cement, and then he would spring up, and he'd be, I mean, I don't know how many feet up in the air, maybe 7-8 feet in the air, and then come crashing down in that water.
I loved that diving. That diving board was the best diving board ever. There was so much spring on that thing.
There was so much spring on that diving board. I totally agree. And apparently, who told me? Maybe it was you. I don't know. Maybe it was Kelly. Said the pool is it's 8 feet deep, really, in the middle, or so it slopes in or something like that. And I was like, well, I can see where they definitely couldn't have it because it was 100% a springboard. And it was, but man, was it was fun. But Yeah, when I asked Aaron, I was like, any questions for Todd? He's like, I gotta know all about the belly flop. And I was like, those people are maniacs. Because
I think I don't know if they did the belly flop contest before, I got there, but
they did.
So I don't know, the history of it or whatever, but as soon as they mentioned it, again, anything that has to do with the water, like I'm in, I want to do it. And then I just loved getting as much height, even now, like when I go to a pool as I'm an old man, I'll try to get as much height as I can off a diving board. A buddy of mine has a similar one, and of course the challenge is now you get all that height and you're doing a dive. Well, it's only 8 feet deep, and right. I'm 6 feet tall. Like over 6 feet tall. I'm gonna hit that bottom pretty quick.
Right.
You got to be careful.
Todd, do you have any recollection of the pain level on your chest?
Yeah, pretty painful. And your face too. Like, and I will say this, like, I admit, I feel like your goal was always to like just lay out and land like, belly on the water and have that smack. Yeah, but at the last minute, you're coming in and you're like, oh, this is going to be terrible. Nope. And I feel like you always kind of close in and your arms would go in and your face or whatever. But yeah, it definitely hurts. But I will say, man, if they have a 50th and there's a belly flop competition, I'm in.
Oh, may have just given them an idea. We've got one person. Now,
but how do you do it without that springboard?
I think they still do it, but they just do it off of the side of the pool now. The diving board is gone.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. I went back several years ago, and it was shocking to see no diving board. Although I had heard that was the case. And what was this enormous pool? Yeah. Now it seems so much smaller, Yeah. But it's still a great pool, still a very, very, very big pool. But it just seemed when I was there, huge.
It went from that diving board went from like full use for everyone, and then it was like
only during swimming lessons.
Yeah.
When I ended, it was there, but only for swimming lessons. Yeah.
Like the meter that I think Sue Rice made, it was like good, great, awesome. Like you said, if you were like totally laid out, the camp was like, yeah. And then if your body took over and was like, no, the camp was like, oh, it was like, oh, good, I guess.
Right. They weren't allowed to boo, but they wanted to.
Yeah. So were you just taking junior camp juice like on the regular?
I remember it being like, one of those like taboo rules, like you can't go barefoot, you can't chew gum. And like the number one thing was like no junior camp juice, right? You can't steal it. And now I feel like the statute of limitations is probably expired. By now, I would hope.
We'll see.
But no, I definitely have, like, I am the consummate rule follower. I always have been a rule follower, and I probably always will be, but probably one of the biggest crimes that I ever committed on a regular basis was when you would go in, you walk through the stables and you put your lunch in the refrigerator, or when you bring the assistant counselor bring the lunches down for everybody, you put them in the fridge. There's the juice. There's the juice. Take a little sip, right? I don't know. I wasn't the only one that did that, right?
No, I had my ventures with the junior camp juice. There was something very tasty about that stuff. I don't know exactly what it was, but
I was just surprised that no one had brought that up. And I'm like, that's like one of my big memories of camp. Is like
that was a real late '80s thing. People stealing junior camp juice. That kind of died down after that point, but.
I got to say, at some point, they changed the juice they were buying, because I do remember it being very delicious. And then there was one summer that it was just like, oh, like you went to Market Basket. This is.
I think. Right. So maybe it's not worth stealing. But man, I remember it being delicious.
But it is so. You're right, though. It's like it was up there with the big rules of like no bare feet, no running. Yeah. Like these are, if we're going to run a successful camp, we need to put these into place. Yeah, no, I can appreciate that.
Right.
You also mentioned something that we haven't talked about, but I also take with me, and that would be Gail and the weather.
Yeah.
So How does Gail describe rainstorms?
It's all about the blobs, right? It's either big red blobs or shit. I can just remember her like running to sing or running to see Tom. The red blobs are coming. The red blobs are coming. And so, like, even, fast forward several years, my wife and I are talking about, should we go play golf or whatever? And I can remember looking on the news, oh, there's green blobs coming. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I had to explain to her the Gale methodology of weather, which is absolutely right? It's green blobs, yellow blobs, and red blobs. And we still, I don't know, that's just how I'd never heard of that. And maybe everybody does that, but to me, that's a Gale thing. And I took that from camp.
No, I think I definitely do it. And it probably is camp. Later on, I have a memory of her. So this is, must have been probably the early aughts. And I have a memory of her with 3 or 4 pieces of paper. So she had printed out the radar. Yep. And she's running up to Tom and she's like, look at this. And he's like, okay. And
of course, that's before, there were no cell phones or now you just pull the weather app and look at the cell phone. But I totally forgot about that, but I can totally picture her running with all those printouts. Yep.
Just look at this. And then the two of them kind of conferring, looking well, it'll probably hit around 4:05. I think we'll be okay. And then we just kind of go on and it kind of goes from there. So Eric brought this up and I didn't know the origin of this, or maybe you brought it up too, Bill, but those canoe trips. So were you guys were, I'm assuming, on the inaugural ones, right? It was right.
I think so. Oh my God, they were awesome. So I think, like you've alluded to with so many of your guests, I mean, you get this family, right, for 6 weeks where it's you don't exist outside of camp, and you're spending the nights after either editing video or shopping for the cookout or whatever the case may be. These people that you're spending every day with, you can't get enough of, and you want to spend more time with them, which is awesome. But I can remember it, probably the first year that there wasn't an overnight, we all just talked and let's go on a canoe trip.
I was probably an assistant by the time we started doing those. I was just about to say, I think you were probably the one that chose where we went that first time, because it seemed to me like you were familiar with that river, that, we went down the Charles River on that first one. We didn't go to Norton on that first one.
I remember going to Norton first.
No. We went down the Charles River and we stopped at this campsite up there. And I don't know why I thought it was your idea. Maybe it wasn't, but it just seemed
it could have been, because I used to do that canoe trip with my father, putting it in Medfield and pulling out in Natick at the falls. But maybe I'm just reversing it in my memory, because I feel like the ones that are the most memorable for me are the ones on the island there in Norton. Where I don't know where that was, but I feel like I thought those were first, but maybe not.
No, once we started there, we never went back. We only did one other one that wasn't there. And that was the first one. We went down the Charles River and we stopped at a campsite on the Charles River.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there were 10 or 12 of us there that night.
Having orange fights in the canoes and
And then from there we never stopped going to Norton.
Okay, yeah. Norton was great. That was a great location. But that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. They were a really great times there. You missed it. You missed
we started doing it after with the whole next generation or whatever, and they're a blast. I have one memory of, you look forward to it all year, and we get there and it's definitely inclement weather, right? It's the sky is not good. And we hear a little bit of thunder. We're halfway through, because that canoe trip out takes maybe 10 minutes. And I remember being in the canoe with Jack Cowell, and I'm like, well, I hope we make it, because we're in a metal canoe and it's thundering out. And we're 20, 21 years old. And that wasn't a very good idea, but we're well, we have to get out there, because not only is it lightning out and we're in a canoe, but what better place to ride out the storm than an island? So it's just the thought process. But we picked them up. I don't know. I was a head counselor for a couple of years at that point. So I have to talk to Katie Bell, actually, because I think that I don't know if they ever stopped. They might have continuously been going and just the people.
Well, Sarah,
changed.
were you doing one a summer?
Yeah, we just did one.
We were doing like 3.
Oh, excuse me. I didn't realize. Never mind.
Yeah, there were a lot of
every other
weekends.
Saturday. I mean, that group was tight. We spent a lot of time together. It was just most weeknights we would end up at Kelly's house.
Sure.
Just hanging out.
Still happens. Yeah.
On weekends we would end up, canoeing out and just having, camping. Something I would never do now.
Right.
So Todd, like when you emailed and you're like, hey, Kelly called me out, I got to come on the pod. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, here's a person who like cares. The response that I'm getting more than anything is like, this is awesome. Like what a shot of nostalgia. It turns out that everyone kind of has their own reasons for loving it. It was, it's a formative time of your life that you're there. And like, it just, everything that we did for 6 weeks, just 20 years later, it just kind of matters. So it's cool hearing from everyone that you don't know. So.
And for me, it's been cool hearing, like just listening, even the people that, were there, after I left, or even now, like just hearing some of the familiar names, or just how things have changed but yet stay the same. And like I'm here, I hear hearing a lot about Billy Rice. One of the things when I was pool director, you don't have a tribe, right? When you're a pool director,
right.
So Gail had me teach Billy how to swim during lunch.
Come on.
So yeah, I would eat my lunch when all the tribes were doing their tribe thing. And then before things, so I would wolf down a sandwich or whatever. And then Billy would come out of the house and would be in the junior camp pool and would be doing swimming lessons. I mean, he was so young. I'm sure he doesn't remember that. But I mean, he was, younger than even Gail's grandson could go as a tenderfoot, but I'm teaching him doing swimming lessons. Yeah. That was at least one summer.
I did see that you had come back a few years ago, but how many times have you been back over the years?
So yeah, I probably stopped in 3 or 4 times. Like I said, I now work, the company's based out of Taunton. So every now and again, if I'm driving, I think one of the first times, or rather one of the most recent times, all of a sudden I'd realize I'm driving home. I'm like, wait a minute, it's July and it's a weekday and it's early enough and I just randomly pulled in and actually I remember, I think it was shortly after Sam took over for Tom. So I drive in and I'm walking around, and of course I don't really recognize that many people. There's not a lot of familiar faces. So I go up to the pool, and of course there's Kelly, and I see Gail, and then all of a sudden I see Sam, and it's like time warp, because I saw Tom when I was there 30 years ago, and it was a mind game, because I'm like, what? That's not Tom. That's Sam.
Oh
it was crazy, but it was like seeing Tom 30 years ago.
I can totally see that as glancing over at Sam and being like, what has happened at this camp?
Yeah.
Why is Tom the same age?
Exactly. So
it is.
But yeah,
magic.
seeing the changes, and then I think the last time was. So how long has Sam been in charge?
I think this is his 3rd year. I had a cool moment a year or two. I think it was last year. I was standing there with Tom in the back of the Sing, and Sam had to leave that day. He had a doctor's appointment or something, so he was leaving for the day, and Tom was taking over for the afternoon. So while the skits were going on, Sam came back and was updating Tom on everything that he needed to do. And, so they were kind of going over it, and he's like, so Dad, you have to do this at certain time, blah, 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 and it was just awesome to be standing there listening to the 2 of them go through
That's
this.
cool.
I've watched them both do it so many times,
right?
But to watch them inform each other was cool. I really liked it.
That's really cool. That's
yeah.
It's like behind the curtain business.
What do you carry with you from camp? Personality, sense of humor, all of those things. Do you attribute them to your camp experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like as we touched on before, I mean, I think like you said, I mean, I was, if there was any attention given to me at all, I would be completely bright red and just horrified by that, right? So then, you know, moving forward, like throughout my career or whatever, I think that having that, I wish that I could have experienced it as a camper. You know what I mean? I hear all you guys that have gone and seen it from campers to counselors, you know, CITs or counselors and stuff like that. I think would be even more beneficial. But just having that, I think it just kind of, I guess, launched the being able to being comfortable being uncomfortable, I guess, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like that's where I found it. I think the two biggest things for me in my life were playing football at Medfield and camp. 100%.
Yeah, I can remember your transformation well. I really can. I remember how shy you were in all of those moments. And then by the end of your camp experience, you were one of the largest personalities on the grounds.
You know? Thank you. I never, I guess, envisioned myself that way, but you know, I look at like people like John Panciaco and you. I mean, to hear you say, Bill, that you were shy. I share Sarah's view. I always just pictured you as being the entertainer. You know.
Yeah, I mean that came a little later, but I was pretty shy through my first few years. I just hadn't found that spot yet.
Right.
But it came.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
I wonder how many other police officers Gail single-handedly sent to the academy because of the traffic and the gloves. She's got a real formula down there.
She does. Yeah, no, I mean, that was definitely, she mentioned that more than once.
That's
I mean, quite honestly, too. I mean, I think, you know, I used her as references. I think she you know, yep. who doesn't go to, you know, camp, as they've probably written a million recommendations and stuff like that. But
he was a Gail pet. Gail loved.
I mean, yeah, I think so. I mean, I knew Tom. Tom was my gym teacher at Wheelock School in first grade, or maybe even kindergarten. He was my gym teacher all through elementary, and then he moved to high school. When I was in the high school, I mean, he was always there. He was the athletic director when I was in high school. So I knew Tom for years and years and years. But yeah, I mean, Gail's Gail. I mean, yeah. I think that there's I definitely would go to Gail, like, you know, for pool stuff or whatever. So I would, definitely say both.
From an outsider view on that question, I will say, you know, I've known Gail a long time, and if I had to pick two names on who she was, you know, who she would view herself as closest with, it would have been John Panciaco and Todd.
Really?
Oh yeah.
So
she loved.
I mean, I feel like Gail and I had something, you know, selfishly, I feel like, I think I was one of her favorites. No, I feel like everybody must think that. There's like a wooden star over the pool staff door. It's like a cutout. So there was a period of time after camp when I was like in my 30s or whatever, and I actually got pretty sick, and she actually came and gave me that. She's like, I'm going to give you the star. So they came and visited me, and like that was like hugely meaningful. And she's like, and you can give it back when you get better. And one of my visits back to camp was going back and giving it. Hey, thank you for the star. I don't need this anymore. That was pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
Yeah, that meant a lot.